When I think of craft, I think of two things. I think of something that's very handmade, and I think of a sense of history. Craft feels like something that is a tradition that's being handed down. Cheese making obviously employs both. The best cheeses are made when you can feel what's going on with the milk, because you're having to use your eyes, your hands, all your senses. So it's a craft because it's made by hands, by people. You can't just walk into a dairy, pick up a recipe and make a good cheese. It's a science, it's an art, it's an instinctive thing, it's everything. Craft is about that. It's about the passion that you have for something to be the best it can be. The Somerset pastures are perfect for dairy cows, which is why it's the home of cheddar. Tom is always interested in a sense of terroir, so he's trying to express the quality of the pasture land that they have there.
What we're really trying to do is just get this flavour of a specific place and area. We've got this absolutely stunning little corner of the world. Somerset is very good at growing grass, and wherever there's grass, then you tend to find a good dairy production. First of all, it starts with the soil. I mean, that is the start of everything. Soil sounds like the most simplest thing. It's essentially kind of mud with a few like bacteria and microbes and the organic matter going in there, but it's so much more.
Good. Yeah.
We always had flowers. I mean, it was red clover mostly in the...
Westcombe Dairy is unique because we are pushing towards a really, really diverse grazing lay, so letting nature take its path a lot more with the growing of the crops.
But it does show more of the diversity, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So you've got Timothy, you've got perennial ryegrass, you've got a bit of Italian in there.
The more variety the cows eat of herbage, the more different types of plants in their grazing sward, the more interesting and flavoursome the cheese will be. So much of British cheese making is tied up in very commercial production, which is a million miles away from what we're trying to do. We want to produce a food that reflects the seasons. Much like really good wine, you're tasting a bottled memory of that year, and cheese is basically a bottled memory of every day.
It's done what I think it should do.
I started farming 50 years ago. And in those days, there was a lot of incentive to produce a lot of food. And I think we probably did damage to the land. So what we're trying to do at Westcombe is revitalise that.
Yeah, I think it's worked well as an experiment.
The soil is the most important thing. Without soil, you can't grow crops.
There's ribgrass, it should have chicory in there.
I think that the sustainability of the soil will make a lot better cheese. It's a lot better for our environment, and it's a lot better for our children and grandchildren. It's a vitally important thing to do.
In the past, there would have been thousands of people making cheese across the country. Every dairy farmer would have had their liquid milk sales, and often the farmer's wife would make cheese at home. During the Second World War, the rationing was introduced, and so people were encouraged to make a very standard style of cheese. When rationing ended, there was a lot of expertise, a lot of knowledge that was lost because people didn't go back to the old ways of making the cheddar on the farm for themselves or for their family. Westcombe is quite interesting because they did try block cheddar for a while, but soon decided that there's not that much joy in making something that you don't love. So they changed from making block cheddar to cloth-bound artisan Somerset cheddar.
When I was 16 and we went on holiday to the Loire Valley, my family rented a house on this little farm and the farmer just took me under his wings. So I did muck spreading and ploughing and I was so happy. Just did nothing else my family went off and had holiday and my holiday was at the farm. Initially I was really into tractors. I wasn't that bothered by the food that you get from tractors. Like, yeah, bread, it's all right. But I really, really loved what cows produced.
To find a herdsman is difficult, but then to find a herdsman who's got a degree is very difficult, and then to find a herdsman who's got a degree in the influence of pasture on flavour of cheese. I think there's only one of them, to be honest, and that's Nick.
He's a very innovative, passionate herdsman. He's certainly not someone who's going to do things the way they've always done them. He's going to try different ways of grazing, different ways of looking after the animals.
I really like milking. It's a daily harvest. Arable farmers, they harvest lots of their crops in summer and the autumn, and I harvest my crop twice a day. It's the same way if you've ever done any gardening and grown vegetables in the back garden or something. It's ingrained in us that we want to produce food, so it's a real privilege to be able to do that.
Most farmers couldn't care anything what the milk flavour's like, but he does because he's made cheese. He will get that and be very interested in producing the right milk. He was very much like me. He comes from a non-farming background.
Music was always part of my life. I think I went to my first concert when I was 9 days old and played in front of people the first time when I was 3 years old. When we finished school at 18, we signed a record deal and we did a couple of albums. And then from there, I did quite a lot of session work as a drummer. I vividly remember every time I'd land in a new country, as we come into land, I'd always be staring out at the farmland and trying to see what the farming was like. By the time I was in my mid-20s, I felt the call of the cows again.
If you're going to make really good cheese, you have to have really good milk. You're not going to get really good milk from animals unless they've had a good, healthy life.
I think happy cows will give happy cheese and good cheese. And if I can walk around at night, as I do before I go to bed every night, I walk around the cows, and because they look well, I have a smile on my face and I know that they're comfortable. To be a farmer, you need a really good relationship with your animals. They're part of your family. It's not just a thing, it's a living being.
This is pumpkin, I think. Is this pumpkin? Yes. Hello. Hello. I really, really enjoy working with cows. I have more interaction with cows than I probably do with humans, just because of the nature of the job. They're like cartoon characters quite often. Just their complete obsession with food can be very, very hilarious. How similar they are to humans how I think I've learnt more about fellow mankind working with animals than I ever have with working with other humans. You put cows in a lovely, luscious new field of grass, and within 10 minutes you'll have cows putting their heads over the fence trying to get to the other field, just because the grass is always green on the other side.
The thing I love about chilies is they're all different, they all taste different, they all smell different, and they're all different shapes and sizes. And these are the ones, they're like a cross between chili and peppers. They're like the things they make.
I was in the lounge watching The Naked Chef, Jamie Oliver. I looked at the telly, as you do, for inspiration about when Dad came in and said, right, come on, you know, what are you going to do with your life? You've got to decide something, let's try and work it out. And I thought, wow, that looks good, I'll be a chef. So I went up to London and learned how to cook, really. At that stage, Dad decided to get back into the traditional cheese making, and they were having struggled selling the cheese. So I decided to come down and give them a hand.
He came here, and then Randolph Hodgson from Neal's Yard Dairy was doing a tasting that day, and he said, come back up to London with me and I'll teach you cheese. So he was here for a day and he went straight back up to London, so he wasn't here very long.
I worked at Neal's Yard Dairy for about 9 months, and then worked really hard selling our cheese, and realised the reason why I was working so bloody hard to sell the stuff is because it was not very good. So found myself getting drawn more and more into the dairy to try and make it taste better. We also make the ducats caffili with a girl called Jemima Caudle. So she has a doctorate in biochemistry from Oxford. That's really handy if you want to be a cheesemaker. So that was when we kind of started to put a bit more of the science behind what we were really doing. And when I was making the cheddar and she was making the caffili, I'd be kind of taking it over and saying, right, okay, so tell what's going on here. That's when, you know, people started to get a bit more aware of what we were about.
What up, food tubers? Okay, so today we're going to do an experiment with one of the best cheesemakers on the planet, from Westcombe Cheddar, Tom Calver.
Jamie's been a huge fan of what we do, which I'm hugely grateful for. Somebody that you've respected for your whole life and stuff, to kind of turn up and say, oh, you know, good job. It's massive.
Look at that, that is a proper cheese right there. Now,
Because Tom was trained as a chef and I was trained as a farmer, that's a very good division. We've never had a serious argument. We will not agree with each other sometimes, and we'll discuss it and work it out. It must be said that more often than not, he tends to be right, which is frustrating. But I've learned a lot from them. I've been very lucky having someone I can work with who's so passionate with what he does. And we are lucky, yeah. It could be so different.
We have raw milk coming into the dairy, and we have people. And the relationship between the raw ingredient, the milk, and the person is where the magic happens.
It's endlessly fascinating. You have 4 ingredients. You have milk, salt, rennet, starter cultures, and from that you can make a world of different flavours.
There's a huge influence on flavour about the decision making on every single aspect of when you're gonna cut, when you're gonna texturise, how far you're gonna stretch it, what kind of things you're gonna do. That is the art. That is the art, the artisan.
This side of cheese making, or any artisan craft, is good because you're essentially keeping hold of the old traditional ways of doing it. I mean, nowadays it's too easy to get a machine in there. With us here, it's all handmade. You see it from the liquid state, and then you go through the whole process and make it into a cheese, so it's quite rewarding.
We're constantly questioning what we're actually doing and is this right? It's so difficult to tell because if you think about it with a cheddar, what we made today, we won't see until it's ready, which is this time next year. That's why it's such a complicated equation to get a really decent, beautiful tasting cheese.
I need to go into the store and select some cheese. I need to grab Jason to help me with that.
Yep. It's fair enough.
When we taste through cheeses, we tend to taste one cheese per batch, and that will give us the beginnings of a blueprint of what that kind of day was like. It's a bit like if you were a chef and you were to send something out to the restaurant and you hadn't tasted it. That is a disaster. So this one's an August one. It's got another couple of months. I mean, it's good. I mean, it's got a really nice body about it, and the flavour profile's like, yeah, it's nice and balanced. Yeah, it's surprising actually. I was quite pleased.
Once the cheese is made, he wanted to create the best environment he could for them to be looked after. So you can imagine going to your dad, who has been farming for years, and saying, "Oh, I want to build a cave in the side of the hill." It's a fairly ambitious thing to want to do, but he made it happen. And then he goes and commissions the first ever cheddar turning robot in the UK.
We have Tina the Turner, bless her, the cheese turning robot. Turning a cheese over is a necessary job, but actually the physical act of turning it over, there's nothing artisan about that. When you've got 6,000 cheeses to turn over, it just hurts. With the introduction of Tina the Turner, we are able to taste through every single cheese within that batch. If you think about this as a great big library of flavour, every single cheese has its own unique identity. Too much these days, you're looking at consistency and trying to make sure that everything tastes like you had it yesterday, and the day before, and the day before that. I don't know. It's not that inspiring, is it? I would be absolutely gutted if our cheese was just described as good and consistently good. Because who wants to be consistently good? Like, really? That's not life, is it? Done.
If you think how ubiquitous throughout the world cheddar is, it's amazing to think that actually that sort of very particular, made on the farm, cloth bound, complex cheddar, there's only 3 people in the world who are really doing that. People think they know what cheddar is, but what they know is what cheddar has become, whereas these cheddars are much more the real thing, the true origin of where cheddar started.
When we produce the best cheese, that, you know, that holy grail of cheeses, which is just perfect, absolutely 100% faultless, then we might as well pack our bags up and go home, and that's it, we've done it.